Good afternoon and welcome to this pitch on behalf of the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. My name's Andy Deacon, the Director of Strategy and Operations as part of our Secretariat team based in Brussels. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'd like to share some slides with you to walk through a presentation on behalf of the Covenant, and I'll end with an invitation for cities and potentially other partners to get involved and to join us. I'm just having some trouble getting the PDF up on the screen. So just in terms of an introduction to the Global Covenant of Mayors, it's an international alliance of cities that are working to achieve a climate resilient future. The Global Covenant The Global Covenant works with local and regional governments to take ambitious climate and energy action and to help them measure their progress towards those targets. So the organization is not just about target setting in the future, but also about providing support and tools, enabling access to financing, and allowing peer-to-peer networking and exchanges between regions to allow then development of climate and energy strategies for cities right across the globe. So the Covenant envisage a world where committed mayors and local governments are really accelerating ambitious and measurable climate and energy initiatives, and believes that together we can create a low emission and climate resilient future. So the whole ethos of the organization, to reiterate, is based not only around setting targets, but also around providing the tools and the mechanisms to then deliver on that ambitious action. We also firmly believe that cities are a key part of the solution to climate change in an increasingly urbanized world. With large and growing populations in the coming years living in cities, then without action on cities, then global climate commitments such as the Paris Agreement and others will not be achieved. So an important part of the jigsaw, and in addition to work being undertaken through multilateral agreements and negotiations between national governments, then city governments are an important part of being able to both set those targets and to meaningfully deliver on the ground against them in the coming years. So the network has grown rapidly in the past few years, and I'll say a little bit about the history and development of the Covenant in the coming minutes. But we now have over 10,000 committed cities, 100 plus supporting partners from a range of organizations in many different parts of the world. And the populations in cities that have made commitments to the Global Covenant now represent more than 800 million people. We've also done work and update our estimates every year on aggregate potential emissions savings from commitments made by the Covenant. So 90 billion tons of potential CO2 savings by the year 2030 could come from cities that have made those commitments to the Global Covenant of Mayors. That's a large and growing commitment, something that we continue to measure and track, and allows us to kind of demonstrate the aggregate power of the network by drawing together and building up from those individual commitments from cities. So cities of all sizes, large and small, can benefit from joining and getting on board with the Global Covenant, but through this activity that we routinely undertake to bring those emissions together, then we're able to tell one aggregate overall story that then kind of links those individual commitments together and can make individual members part of something much greater by joining in with a larger overall whole. So effectively, that then international alliance brings together various different aspects towards the delivery of those goals, and mobilizes cities and local governments in the fight for global climate action. So local governments are encouraged to be as ambitious as they can in setting those targets, and the covenant addresses both emissions reduction and climate change adaptation, and is working together on both of those goals, as well as looking at work that also addresses access to energy, and building in other important aspects of the climate issue. So by doing that, we firmly believe that cities can make a major contribution towards achievement of global climate goals that include the Paris Agreement. So I said I'd recap a little just on the history of the covenant and how it came together. So in 2017, the Global Covenant basically brought together two different initiatives: the Covenant of Mayors for Europe and the Compact of Mayors. And the kind of joining together of those two initiatives links together large numbers of cities taking meaningful action from different parts of the world. So cities that sign up to either were kind of automatically then part of the Global Covenant, and it brought together two powerful alliances, but put them together under the auspices of one umbrella organization covering the entire world. So how are we structured? It's an interconnected global alliance of partner networks and of cities. So the outer ring that you see around here represents individual covenants of mayors that are covering different parts of the globe. In some cases, nation by nation at national level, others covering multiple countries and aggregating into regions. And there are then a group of city networks that will be familiar to many. So the C40 Cities Network, ICLE, UCLG, a number of European network partners, so Energy Cities, Eurocities, Climate Alliance, and others, and representative parts of the European Commission. And they come together to help, kind of connect the central secretariat that you see in the center of that diagram to activity across that range of regions and through those regional networks of cities. So we have a strategic board that sets the direction of the overall movement and provides local and regional specific perspectives. And the co-chairs of the initiative are Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Frans Timmermans, and Michael Bloomberg. And they come together both to bring their own perspectives and to help provide a steer. The board is then made up of mayors from different parts of the globe, covering different regions. And links together to then provide that coverage and to provide an overall strategic steer for the initiative. So the regional covenants are the important kind of building blocks of the overall global effort. And the covenant brings together national or regional covenants and their partners, really spanning the globe. And obviously, context changes markedly between regions. So those regional covenants are empowered to apply methods and approaches that best meet their local needs, but they are then all kind of acting together. Then under that umbrella that then allows both aggregation and common recognition of issues, and then us to provide tools, mechanisms and support to address the need that's really there on the ground for meaningful climate action. So there are 13 regional or national covenants of mayors that have been established worldwide. And each of those is supported by a help desk that's providing targeted support to signatory cities across the region or in the country in question. So why would or should municipalities be interested in getting involved with the Global Covenant? So it's a powerful and historic movement. So it's really trying to provide solutions through strategic action plans, sustainable energy and climate action plans on the ground that bring together multiple kind of facets and ideas for action that are linked to concrete targets and to tools and mechanisms both to provide data and to link to ongoing monitoring. And so there are the help desks that are available on the ground to bring support to cities and in a meaningful way, linking to case studies of success, hearing from others in the region that are taking action, drawing out and identifying common issues and then flagging those for the development of support to come into place. And I'll say a little bit more about how some of that has worked. Through kind of linking together sets of issues in thematic areas that are then addressed by the Global Covenant. So just a few kind of quotes kind of emphasizing the importance of the initiative from our chairs of the initiative and from one of our board mayors. Important to note, and very much agree with the sentiment here, that kind of cities are on the front lines of climate change. But they are also uniquely positioned to lower emissions. As I mentioned in kind of earlier remarks, in a world with an increasingly urbanizing population, then it's clear that action in cities will be needed both to deliver on the problem, but if we don't address climate change rapidly enough, then cities will bear the brunt of the impacts of climate change too. And the Global Covenant can help them to take action. From Executive Vice President Tim Timmermans, very clear that urban climate action is at the heart of the European Green Deal and is essential to achieving a global Green Deal. And there have been many calls recently, both as part of COVID recovery, but more broadly for a global Green Deal, and action already beginning as part of European Green Deal to think about the role that cities can play, both in engaging with citizens, with civil society groups, with business and industry, academia, and others to come together to address the urban climate issue and to work as rapidly as possible towards net zero emissions targets. And participation in the covenant can really kind of open up new opportunities, as you hear from one of our mayors. So very kind of practical help, but it's really kind of bearing results on the ground in terms of improving living conditions for citizens, and as well as that aggregation together that's making a contribution to the global fight against climate change. So what are some of the benefits of joining the Global Covenant? So it is partly that kind of contribution globally, an opportunity to come together with other cities that are taking action. There is extensive training and resources available, and I'll leave up as my last slide one that kind of links through and gives URLs and links for opportunities to link to our platforms and to get involved. And it really is a growing movement. So cities are continuing to come on board from many different regions of the world and increasingly recognize that there is meaningful provision of support as part of the process of making a commitment to the Global Covenant, and recognition that it's dealing with key issues, not only emissions reduction, but also climate change adaptation and access to energy. So kind of by committing to the Global Covenant, then cities that get on board make a commitment to greater climate impact, but can also expect to benefit from increasing recognition for their activity. So there are opportunities for networking, cooperation, and knowledge exchange, supporting collaboration across all levels of government. So meetings between mayors and ministers within in individual countries, trying to boost climate ambition, to recognize the role that regional and local contributions can play in increasing ambition of nationally determined contributions, and really pushing the climate action agenda forward. There is tailored support that's provided, so it's not all coming from one central source. The regional covenant network adds massive strength, kind of decentralized power, really going into the way in which committed cities then receive support, and a chance to be part of this unified voice, linking up with over 10,000 other cities. So what do we offer? So a set of kind of harmonized requirements, a set of guidance and tools, a lot of technical assistance and capacity building, global partnerships, advocacy and communications campaigns. We're mobilizing new investment, and I'll say something more about that in a moment, and a set of kind of coordinated strategy overall, and clear governance structure in place that oversees all of that. And that ambitious climate action can help cities transform in many different ways, not only by reducing emissions or dealing with direct kind of threats from climate change impacts and the need to adapt. There are also co-benefits in terms of improved air quality, reduced congestion, kind of improved access to services, improved well-being for citizens, making a more attractive environment for investment, and the alleviation of energy poverty. So the work that the Global Covenant is doing will deliver multiple co-benefits for citizens in each of the committed cities. So just very quickly, we have kind of three initiatives that are important parts of the Global Covenant in terms of programmatic delivery of support for climate action. So you'll see here, Innovate for Cities, dealing with research and innovation, Invest for Cities, dealing with finance and investment, and Data for Cities, dealing with the underlying data to support action, and tools to help cities on their climate action journey. So Innovate for Cities is trying to address gaps in research and innovation. So cities' climate action needs are made visible, and we can link up work at urban level with national research agendas. Um, it's really a kind of an opportunity to link with a global call for action. So a cities and climate science agenda at global level, and an opportunity for cities to link their own work and to understand how that fits into broader efforts on research and innovation that are taking place globally. So some of this work grew from the Edmonton Declaration, which brought together key kind of scientists identifying urban climate issues, and led to the establishment of a global agenda, setting out mechanisms to start to identify and fill the gaps in terms of the research that's needed in this area. The Covenant is also working alongside global mission innovation to build a mission on cities, to link national governments, the private sector, other civil society actors and mayors to recognize and to deliver on the innovation challenges of cities trying to reach zero carbon targets. And we're working with EIT Climate Kick on a policy innovation task force in recognition of the fact that in order to deliver some of these innovative climate solutions, that we need innovative policy thinking, as well as further developments on research and innovation on the technology side. So also trying to innovate in policy fields. As well as on the technology side, and the Policy Innovation Task Force will report towards the end of this year on work on that area. In terms of in terms of Invest for Cities, then it's an initiative supporting investment at local level, allowing cities to advance investment plans and to bring projects forward from their underlying sustainable energy and climate action plans, and to really bring those forward and engage with both public and private sector investors to help projects be realized and come to fruition. So we're working with a range of city network partners, with financial institutions, with multilateral lending institutions, and others, to advance activity that's needed. And that's led, for example, to the opening in September of this year of the City Climate Finance Gap Fund, where GCOM is partnering with government donors from Germany and Luxembourg, implementing agencies from the European Investment Bank and World Bank on a 100 million fund to provide technical assistance and capacity support to cities who want to advance projects from the planning phase, and help to advance those towards investment. Again, assistance and support available through the Global Urbis partnership, operated by the European Investment Bank and other partners, including the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And you'll hear from some of these institutions as part of the Finance in Common event that's running alongside the Paris Peace Forum. And kind of very keen to engage with them to provide support to cities on the ground in a practical way to help advance their thinking and their projects forward, as well as then working on enabling environments. So working with the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance and others to kind of find ways for national governments to evolve the policy framework and the enabling environment for investment, specifically in urban climate finance solutions. And then finally, we're partners in the new International Coalition for Sustainable Infrastructure, ICSI, and leading some of the work there on financing, again, trying to make sure that as much investment as possible is going into infrastructure in cities that's truly sustainable. And then finally onto Data for Cities, which offers a common reporting framework for cities, is aiming to simplify and kind of make available the process of gathering and using data to support climate action, and working to kind of then quantify improvements both at individual city level, but then through aggregation, the collective action of cities on, then demonstrating the outcomes, results, and impacts of the work that they're undertaking. So there's a lot of work that's gone into the development of a common reporting framework so that cities across those multiple regional covenants of mayors can report, and that then kind of data can be aggregated together. We've worked with Google on their Environmental Insights Explorer to make Google's data resources available to cities. We're also working in partnership with WRI on a tool called the Data Portal to then bring a whole set of data available to support the compilation of emissions inventories and other tools by cities. And are working with Bloomberg Associates and WRI on a tools working group that is then helping cities to understand the climate action planning journey and making data tools and support available. So in terms of joining, then there are some kind of pledges or commitments that are made that are up on the slide there, and the commitment requirements are set out in the common reporting framework. And I'll leave a last slide up in a moment while just answering a few questions that have come in. We've recently refreshed our website to integrate a new climate action journey, enabling cities to kind of jump in where they feel they are on their journey towards net zero and resilient futures, and then kind of dropping down and finding resources and support that's available to help them advance even further towards that journey. And I'll leave the slide up there with the URL for the website that will give you much more information and enable access both to information about other cities in your region that have already committed, and provide then links through to enable you to follow our work on some of the social media platforms. So a couple of questions have come in just in terms of how we concretely coordinate with national governments and other local and international partners. So we mentioned the covenant both works through and with the regions, and in some of those and on specific topics I've mentioned, like research and innovation. Then we're planning a series of structured kind of dialogues to bring regional flavour to that global overview picture of research and innovation kind of needs and action in cities. So we're helping to make those concrete linkages between the local and the national level. Also a question on how the COVID-19 crisis has affected the Global Covenant. Have we found environmental issues have been set aside? To which I'd say not necessarily, no. So there is work underway on green recovery, the way in which recovery spending could best be directed towards green outcomes. and much more information on that on the website. But we found that we've not diverted entirely onto COVID-19, but it has featured as part of those dialogues with cities and regions across the globe with regards to their future activity. So thank you very much for taking the time to join. I hope that's given a useful high-level overview of the Global Covenant, and please take the time to visit the website to drop in, find many more resources that are available to support cities, and if you're interested, make that commitment and get on board. Thank you very much.